Hello BookTube. For this Tag Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the C tag created by Jim of Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. So let's get started. C is for countries. Cuba, Colombia, Chile, Congo, Cyprus, Czechia, China, and Canada. What was the last book you read by an author from Canada or China or another country beginning with C? So if you've been following my channel for a while, you will know that I had two reading projects. One in which I would read 20 novels by an American that I was calling America 20, and another one, Around the World in 80 Books, where I would select 80 books, not necessarily novels, from around the world. Although both projects relied rather heavily on what you could call general fiction or literary fiction. And if you've also been following my channel for any length of time, you will know for the past year and change, I have not had much success with reading general or literary fiction, or any fiction in general, honestly. I'm also having a hard time reading science fiction and fantasy. So both projects, definitely America 20, which I did kind of start on, has kind of gone into abeyance. And then Around the World in 80 Books has never really kind of gotten off the ground. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I haven't been reading books from authors from countries beginning with C. In fact, I've actually read two books by Chinese writers in the past month. Initially, I thought the answer was, when I was formulating my responses, I thought the answer was Tombstone, The Great Chinese Famine, 1958 to 1962 by Yang Jisheng. This is a no-holds-barred, take no prisoners, down in the weeds history of the Great Chinese Famine of 1958 to 1962 that saw the death or caused the death of tens of millions of Chinese, and largely could have been prevented because a lot of the tragedy lays at the feet of the Chinese Communist Party and the government of the time. But going back through my reading list, I realized that actually Tombstone was the first book I actually finished in May. So that means that Tombstone isn't the most recent work by a Chinese author I've read. That honor actually goes to A Heart Divided, fourth part of the Legend of the Condor Heroes series by Yong. And this is the concluding volume of the Legend of the Condor Heroes, the first part of the Condor Heroes trilogy. And I quite liked it, except for the ending. I've never really been particularly fond of the Mongolian arcs in the Legend of the Condor Heroes series. But there are some really amazing bits in this book. Particularly the King of Dolly's tale, what happens on Peach Blossom Island, Detective Lotus. There's quite a lot of really good stuff in here. And I actually do want to, at some point, read the entire trilogy the entire novel. It's composed in 4 volumes, but I'm considering it one novel, back to back. And I'm quite looking forward to it. But returning back to sort of my Around the World in 80 Books project, while I'm not getting on well with fiction at all. The idea struck me as I was sort of thinking about my answer to this question, is that, well, I'm really falling in love with history, having read Tombstone and also The History of Bhutan by Karma Funsho, that maybe I could do something similar with like a global history where I basically collect works of history about the world and sort of something similar to that. And I'm going to give that a bit more thought, but let's get on to the next question. C is for Canine and Cat. Show me yours. I do not have a canine, nor do I have a cat. Although C also stands for children and chaos. And when I speak of children, I am of course referring to the 4 children of the apocalypse, my 2 nieces and 2 nephews, who, whenever they come to visit, are gloriously chaotic. We had them over yesterday, and Death was particularly in fine form. He just was trying to get into all sorts of mischief. Like constantly giving his mother trouble. And of course, C also stands for computer, which wore once for his birthday, and he's 6, going on 7. It's like how he said that like last year, because I think he actually wanted it for Christmas. It was so cute. But anyway, so I might here and there in these coming alphabet tags, I might intersperse maybe a story or 2 about them. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, they were over yesterday and it was fun. Okay, C is also for classic. What is the last classic book you read? Now, here I'm kind of in a bit of a bind because I don't actually remember what the last classic I read was. Now, it depends, of course, how we define classic. Are we defining classic by the literature of ancient Greece and Rome, or in a more general sense of any work that has stood the test of time, or pretty much Victorian literature? So I think if we're going by the classic definition, the literature of ancient Greece and Rome, then I would go with Mythos by Stephen Fry. This is Stephen Fry's retelling of the Greek myths. In this volume, he's focusing more on the gods, and it's quite enjoyable. If, however, we're referring to, in general, and largely Victorian literature, then I think the answer is King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard. This is a work of a Victorian adventure fiction in which Sir Henry Curtis and his friend Captain Good approached the old hunter Alan Quatermain, asking his aid in finding Sir Henry's younger brother, who went into the interior of Africa to search for a legendary land and a legendary diamond mine, the King Solomon's Mines. Quatermain eventually decides to take them on, act as their guide when he's offered a tremendous amount of money, particularly for his son. And so they trek into north, and they find this hidden kingdom and the King Solomon's Mines, and stuff happens. And it's been a while since I've read it, and I remember quite liking it. And I might actually come back to it for Victober. I don't know, or I might read the sequel, King's Alan Quatermain. Oh Lord. Anyway, but I want to say that was the last classic. If we're talking about a book that stood the test of time, not necessarily the literature of Greece and Rome. Okay. C is for children's book. What was the last children's book you read for your own enjoyment? This one is pretty simple. And that is The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. So, The Never-Ending Story, along with The Phantom Tollbooth by Norman Juster, are two works of children's literature that I adore the adaptations of. With The Phantom Tollbooth, we would watch the film adaptation every year or so and never quite finish it. During Thanksgiving, like the class before, or like the last day of school before a major holiday, say Thanksgiving or Christmas or at the end of school. And we'd watch it and never quite finish it. And it took me until about 10 years ago when Phantom Tollbooth appeared regularly on TCM that I actually watched the entire film. And that got me wanting to actually read the book. And I actually wanted to read the book before, but I never got around to it. And the same is true of The Never-Ending Story, where I actually watched the sequel adaptation first, and then the first adaptation that dealt with the first half of the story years later. But again, I've always wanted to read the book. And I read The Phantom Tollbooth about 10 years ago or so. But it's taken me until last year to get around to The Never-Ending Story. And it's okay. Maybe it doesn't have as much conflict or as much struggle as I would like. And the second half of the book is, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. Because in many ways, Fantastica sort of looks to be like a sort of a world-sized anglerfish that's sort of luring in children who discovered the Never-Ending Story and who sort of are tasked with recreating the world, and as they recreate Fantastica, are slowly drained of who they are until they're husks, except for those who escape. But anyway, so yeah, my reading experience with The Never-Ending Story wasn't quite all that what I had hoped it would be. But that said, I think, referring to a video Steve did yesterday, or his most recent haul video. No. I think it was yesterday because it was one of the Has Steve Read It videos. Lindsay Reads, I think. She had a book that featured some work by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and Steve mentioned having read the Little House books at an age to where they don't really capture you as a reader. That if you read them at a certain age, they'll capture you and they'll keep you. But then if you don't, they don't really have that same power. And I think I'm of the same opinion. I think had I read The Never-Ending Story when I was in elementary school or early junior high, I think I would have had a much better reading experience with it. It would have been something that stuck with me, that hooked me, rather than now, having read it last year, that I'm not as impressed with it as I had hoped I would be. C is for coloring book, namely adult coloring books. So adult coloring books are a thing. Have you tried one? What are your thoughts on this? So I haven't tried an adult coloring book. If I want to paint, I will go and paint. one of my hobbies, although I haven't really done it in a while, is to paint using pastels. You can see some of examples of my work on the wall. Now, while I don't use adult coloring books, my mom does, and she's found them to be very stress reducing and enjoyable to do, although they can cramp her hands pretty good. But yeah. C is for comedy. What is the funniest book you have read? This prompt gave me quite a bit of challenges because I don't necessarily read all that much in the way of comedy. But I want to say it might be Super Fudge by Judy Blume. Super Fudge is the sequel to her seminal work, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and it features the main protagonist of Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing's brother, who is something else. He's a trip. And he kind of sort of stole Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and he sort of continues to steal Super Fudge, and I thought that was hilarious. Although it has been forever since I've read it, so it might not necessarily be as humorous on a reread, but I do remember laughing with it quite a bit. C is for comic books. Can you explain to me the attraction of these? So, I think for me, the attraction of comic books when I was younger is that they are a continuing literature, a continuing piece of entertainment that if they can hook you, you can kind of sort of continue on with it. It's sort of new adventures and new sort of just sort of a certain continuity of sort of a reading experience that if you start with the however you the first time you read one, and then you kind of it hooks you, and then it kind of continues on. I guess it's maybe the best way I can explain it. I know for me, I've been thinking a lot about, obviously because I'm planning on doing a video similar to this tomorrow, and looking into how it appeals to me. And I think for me, the appeal is in part the continuing story in a more manageable form than, say, a break of a novel. And I think that's certainly true with how sort of manga, kind of the appeal manga has for me, particularly shonen manga. But I think it's sort of, there's like a continuing sort of narrative, the soapy elements of it, I think, really sort of appeal to me, if done well. So that's, so I think that would be what attracted me to comics. C is for cookbook. Do I have a favorite? Yes, I have several actually, and I didn't bring any cookbooks in here for this video because they're in the living room, and I'm not going to go through the trouble of bringing them in here. I did not haul. So I haven't gotten any new cookbooks since my last book tour. So if I remember, I will leave a link to my 2020 book tour, my bookshelf tour or library tour down below. But my favorite cookbooks are Gourmet, edited by Ruth Reichel. It's 1,000 recipes that appeared in the pages of Gourmet throughout its history, and I have made quite a few dishes from it, particularly an Alfredo sauce and lemon squares. And I'm also really wanting to try the German chocolate cake frosting recipe. So there's quite a few other recipes I think I'd like to try. I'm also incredibly fond of American Cooking by Martha Stewart. This book has been a go-to for me, not only the chocolate chip cookie recipe, but also there's a peanut butter cookie recipe I really enjoy. Red beans and rice. The recipe in there is quite good. And there's quite a few others I would love to try. And then there's also the cookbook that has been... I haven't tried anything in it recently, but when I had it the first time, I cooked quite a bit from it, and that is the Greek Cookbook, I think, or Greek Kitchen, by Diane Kokelis. It's this big, glorious cookbook, and that its breakdown is more regional than it is by meal type. And I cooked so many recipes in it when I was in college. And I had gotten rid of it, and it took me a while to find a good copy. And I paid probably more than I should have, but I'm quite happy to have it back and look forward to adding some more recipes to it or cooking from it. So, anyway, so let's see here. Is there a final question? Oh, so the sort of final question is: C is for counterculture, but both sides of the debate annoy me, so there's no prompt for that. Yeah. Yeah, that debate is a bit of a pain. So let me see, is there any other prompts? Okay, so yeah, so that wraps up the C tag. I'm probably not going to leave the cancel culture prompt in my sort of thing in the list, so if you kind of want to do this tag, consider yourself tagged, but you don't necessarily have to mention the cancel culture because it is annoying on both sides, one way or the other, and every way in between. But anyway, BookTube, this was quite a bit of fun. So if you would like to do this tag, again, consider yourselves tagged, and I will see you tomorrow with a manga video. So until then, thank you, BookTube. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe, and in my case, stay dry. Or if you're in Texas, right now it's raining, because pretty much we've had about 3 weeks straight of near total complete rain. Not really. It's not as rainy as the weather forecasts have expected, but it's quite a lot of rain. So anyway, at least the drought's over. So, thank you, BookTube.